ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm
Do you want me to
ready.
introduce you as Daniel or Danny?
Handsome.
Handsome. Handsome Danny Garcia. Okay, well, let's do it. I'm
Get 'em all
rocking
the
with it.
time.
I'm rocking with it.
Let's go.
Okay. Welcome back to For the Souls podcast. Today we are with renowned business owner handsome Danny Garcia. You may have seen some of his posts. He has two businesses, Ace
Yes.
Renovations and Alliance Bath and Reglazing.
Yes, ma'am.
Which we will get into how you have established your
Okay.
entrepreneurship and created a business and all of that. But of course, down to business first.
Yes.
Let's get into the nitty gritty, your testimony.
Okay.
So I watched a little bit of your Hopeaholics episode, and this is new for me because I actually usually don't ever like to let myself know anything about any of the guests that I have.
Oh, so you did some homework.
I did some homework with
Okay,
you. I did some
okay.
homework, but that was because one of the posts that I saw, it was just so deep and you were so vulnerable that I was
Yeah.
like, wait, now I got to listen. Now
Yeah.
I got to listen because I'm a big fan of like soft white underbelly and just
Yeah.
listening
Right
to
on.
other people's testimonies. So you've been through some deep things,
Yes, ma'am.
but let's take it back to your childhood.
Okay.
What was your childhood like? How did you grow up?
Well, in a nutshell, I grew up in Southeast San Diego, Logan Heights. It's a nice little neighborhood next to the water almost. In the 80s and 90s, the neighborhood was rough, man.
Yeah.
It was, I like to use the word super ghetto, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of crackheads everywhere. There was homeless people. There was prostitutes on every corner, every block. And I spent a lot of time at home alone. My mom was a single mom. My brother and sister were about 9 and 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So if I wasn't home alone, my mom didn't have a choice but to leave me at some people's houses. And some of these houses, they just weren't the best places to be left at alone.
Were these houses like associates, family houses?
So my mom was under the impression some of them were good friends, and some of them probably were, but some of the people who lived in the house weren't good people, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
However, one of them, who I grow to know as Mama, she was, her husband was a retired military who had his leg amputated because of the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So they lived very, very frugal, almost homeless, right? But I was left there a lot.
Yeah.
And I would go with her early in the mornings. We would go up and down alleys, right? Picking up cans, picking up bottles, cardboard, whatever we can.
Yeah.
And in some cases, I was with her and she got mugged. We walked through an alley one time and they literally beat her so bad. I'm grabbing onto her leg and I'm crying, asking the guys to leave us alone.
Yeah. How old were you during that time?
I had to be 5, maybe
Oh my
6
gosh,
years
so a
old.
little guy.
Right. I was very, very small.
And this is because you guys didn't have family around to help
We
your
had
mom?
my mom had no family. She literally came here from Mexico by herself, right? At least from what I know and understand, it was just her. Right?
Yeah.
She was working 2-3 jobs just to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And again, my brother and my sister were 9 and 10. So by the time I was 5, they were 14, 15. They didn't want nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Right? They were out with their friends, doing their own thing, involved with the Boys and Girls Club, high school activities.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time. If I wasn't at home, I was at someone's house.
Yeah.
Right? Or I was out in the street at a very early age.
Yeah. And I know that you mentioned that you didn't have your biological father in your life.
No.
Did you ever have any kind of father figure in your life?
No, not at
Never.
all. Not until I got a little bit older. I mean, some guys came and go. My mom dated some guys, and again, some of those guys were just not good guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I witnessed a lot of abuse with my mom. I saw a lot of fights, a lot of bottle throwing, knives throwing, arguments, hitting. I witnessed a lot of things that kids at that age should just never see.
Yeah. How would you say that impacted you?
Oh, it
As a
messed me
person?
up for sure. I think I grew a lot of anger, especially going through what I went through at some of these houses. I grew up in a house where you just didn't talk, right? You didn't ask questions, right?
Yeah.
And a kids just go to your room and just shut up, right?
Yeah.
Keep your feelings to yourself. It was very machismo. My mom would always tell me, I'm your mother and your father, but I'm more of a father to you.
Yeah.
Right? She never hugged. She never kissed. She never She never told you I love you, right? It was a pat in the head and, get out of here,
Yeah.
right? And for the most part, as I get older now, and as I gotten older, I got my family. I understand. I kind of understand like what she was kind of going through. I can't
Yeah.
imagine like taking the leap of faith and crossing the border, and you're
Yeah.
pregnant. You have one child and you're pregnant with the other, and you're trying to, you're going to San Diego for a new life, right?
Yeah.
Trying to start off on your own. You have no husband, you have no mother, father, you have no sisters, cousins. It's all you by yourself. So I kind of understand why she grew a really thick skin.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I don't agree with a lot of her choices, but then I also try to, the way I forgive her is just trying to understand like she did the best she could with
Yeah.
what she had.
Yeah. And then I think too, when you reach adulthood and parenthood, being a parent really puts into perspective how much our own
Mm-hmm.
trauma
Mm.
affects our parenting and
Yeah.
affects how we show up.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like for me, it really put into perspective that like when you talk about the lack of love, the lack of affection, the I love yous, but like, her working hard, going and providing.
Yeah.
I feel like in many ways they lacked that.
Yeah.
And so their love language became different things. Like I know my mother-in-law, her love language is darte de comer.
Yeah.
Like she will overfeed you,
Yeah.
but she's not an I love you person.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think she
yeah.
barely started hugging like
Yeah.
within
It's
the
kind of
last
weird,
year.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's their way of showing the love.
Right.
But isn't it amazing how not hearing those things has such a profound impact on one's self-esteem, self-worth, connection?
Yeah, 100%. I was also, and I was just having this conversation with someone. I was blessed in a way too, though, because Mama, which was my babysitter, she was an alcoholic. Her and her husband, they were always doing drugs, but like they spoke life into me.
Yeah.
Like self-belief. Like Mama would always tell me, whenever I was having a bad day or had a bad attitude, she would always tell me, when you're going through the mud, boy, and she was from the South, from Louisiana.
Yeah.
When you're going through the mud, boy, you make sure you focus on the sunlight anytime. And I always, for some weird reason, I always kept that. Right.
Yeah.
And she always tell me, you think positive and positive things happen. And it's funny because for a certain amount in my life, I forgot that.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I started to kind of rewind those thoughts and started to inject them into how I wanted to be as I got older.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something I say all the time now. It's like, if you think positive, positive things happen.
Yeah.
And I always tell my wife, whenever we're going through the mud, we always got to focus on the sun, because everybody goes through mud at some time in their life. Right.
Yeah.
Whatever that mud is, it depends on you and your reality. But when you're going through that, you have to focus on the positivity. And I think like things like that she put into my brain at such a young age is kind of what separated me from a lot of my friends. Because a lot of my friends, and unfortunately I went through a lot of bad things too, right? But my friends, I mean some of my friends' moms were prostitutes.
Yeah.
Right? Some of my friends' mom were ex-cholas and ex-gangsters, and they were always on drugs, shooting up in the kitchen, getting into, every household was different. It was just horrible. But the one thing that I noticed a lot was it was a rapid circle of just negativity in every house you went to.
Yeah.
And the one person in my life that gave me positivity was Mama, right? She would always tell me, man, you got to think right. You got to be good, be kind to people, be respectful to people, right? Be nice to yourself. And a lot of times as a young kid, you don't realize what they're saying.
Yeah.
But as I got older, and as I started making decisions for myself, I started remembering those conversations with her. And now, you meet me now, man, I'm full of positivity, right?
Yeah.
I just different mindset.
And those are what I would call those mustard seeds that people plant in you. And God brings that into fruition as you grow and as life prunes you.
Amen.
How wonderful. Because I love hearing testimonies like that and instances where people that are strangers or people that weren't necessarily really close, or even if it was a close family member, have planted those seeds in people unknowing how impactful that thing made all the difference in the trajectory of someone's life.
100%.
And
100%.
I think it's important for also people to remember to show up that way as well.
Yes.
Because the seeds that you're planting in people could be doing that very thing.
Yes.
For a child, for a person. for whoever, you know?
Yep.
So just a good reminder for everybody to
Uh,
speak positivity onto everybody.
everybody, and then I guess to back to what you said for a father figure, Jerome King. I talked about him in other
Mm-hmm.
podcasts. I was very lucky to have had him for what I thought always was a short period of time. But
Yeah.
what I'm understanding now, it was a lot longer of a time. But for some reason, I guess maybe the trauma I went through, I only saw it for a very small time. But he was an ex MLB player,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now what I understand is when I met him, he was a double A player, so he was traveling off and on throughout America and working as a sheriff as well.
Yeah.
But every time when he had the free time and we were there on the street, um, he would teach us how to box, right? He would teach us how to wash cars. Some of the neighborhood kids,
Yeah.
mainly me, because I was always at his door. I
Yeah.
mean, his wife told me, he's all, I remember you. I went to visit him. I lost contact with him for such a long time. I found him on Facebook and I was like, dude, I got to shake your hand, bro.
Yeah.
Right? So, long story short, we went to visit him. And the first thing his wife tells me and my wife is, I remember when you came to my doorstep with diapers on by yourself. I was like 4 years old, maybe 3, 4. She's like, you were a baby, right? And we had no idea where you came from. You just knocked on our door one day, and I brought you in, I fed you, and like a stray dog. She started laughing.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I mean, it's sad. It's sad and funny at the same time. But she took care of me until my
Yeah.
sister came around to look for me. Like, where's this knucklehead at? But he and those little things that he taught me. He told me, like, if you ever want to make money, go door to door and knock on everybody's house and ask them if you can use their lawnmower to cut their grass,
Yeah.
right? And I started doing that, $5 here, $5 there. Washing cars, I would ask the people, can I use your stuff? I'll wash your car. Give me $2, $3, right?
Yeah.
Um, Also taught me how to be brave. Sometimes you're going to get punched in the mouth, right? You have a decision. You fall down or you get back up and you keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And those little things as a child, you don't realize, but those, like you said, those mustard seeds eventually start to blossom at the right time.
Yeah.
Right. And throughout my life, those are I believe that's why I just never quit. You fall down
Yeah.
7 times, you get up 8.
Yeah.
Right. And if you met my daughters, they'll tell you, man, no, bro. We got to keep moving. We
I
got to
love
keep
that.
moving forward.
I
you
love
know?
that. I know that on Hopeaholics, you were very open when you mentioned earlier in the podcast to these houses that you went through and some of the things that you experienced. To put it bluntly,
Yeah.
you experienced molestation
Yes, ma'am.
from a certain time period
Yeah.
of your life. How long of a period was this? And walk us through what that looked like for you to go through that at such a young age.
Whew. So it was off and on for 3 years. It was a few different people, both female and male.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the males, the female, was just maybe like 8 years older than me, right? Um, she would be the most nice person in front of her mom, but the minute her mom would leave to the store, she'd turn into a devil,
Yeah.
right? And she'd do things and make me do things at a very, very early age. And I remember, like, a lot of times I would beg my mom, please, man, please don't take me over. I'll stay home alone. I won't bother you. I'll wash the house. I'll keep it clean, but please don't. And I would tell her, like, things happen over there. My mom would never believe me to the point where I just stopped telling her.
Why do you
right?
think that is?
I don't, honestly, I think my mom was just invested in just trying to survive.
Yeah.
She was just trying to pay bills, making sure that we had a house, making sure that the water was on, making sure that the lights were on,
Yeah.
I can't imagine being alone with no help. I thank God I have my wife, but I look at some single parents, especially mothers, and I have a soft heart for single mothers.
Yeah.
Like, how the heck do you do it? I mean, you're going to school full time, or you're going to work full time. You're paying bills. You're trying to raise kids, and the father's nowhere to be heard, and your family's hurting to survive on their own. They can't help you, but you're figuring it out, right? And I try to play perspective a lot, and
Yeah.
I've done that lately a lot with my mom, and that's kind of a form that I have of forgiveness with her.
Yeah.
Because for so long I used to be very upset with her,
Yeah.
right? I mean, before my mom got a stroke, I didn't talk to her for 9 years. I just couldn't talk to her. Every time I was around her, I wanted to strangle her. I wanted
Yeah.
to hurt her. I always had the
A
why, a
resentment.
resentment, very angry with her, right? And every time I would find that crack and I would become a child again and try to talk to her, man, my mom was brutal, man. Get the hell out of here. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You're a grown ass man now. You know, my mom was brutal,
Yeah.
right? Um, but off and on for 3 years, you know, I experienced some pretty bad stuff,
Yeah.
you know.
I try to I come from a family where this has been it's like a spirit in our family, a generational plague in our family. And I've tried to play perspective,
Yeah.
and I'm really big on how did other people grow up so that I may understand. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes. And that's what I've
Because,
done with my mom.
and a lot of people don't realize that a lot of healing and a lot of overcoming the adversity in your life is actually doing that, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and like taking yourself out of the transgression to be able to understand certain
Yes.
injustices, which
Yes.
sounds kind of crazy, right? Because, there's a lot of people that don't believe in forgiveness, but I
Yes.
know you're a man of faith and you know
Yes,
the
ma'am.
power of forgiveness.
Yes.
Um, and I think that I've observed that a lot of it as well when it comes to the older generation is in admitting that this injustice was done to you is also admitting a failure within oneself.
Right.
And sometimes that truth is too hard to bear.
Yes.
And I think that we can understand that more than anybody because in our journey to get to this place of glory,
Yeah.
we've had to do a lot of self-analyzation and honesty of our own flaws,
Yes. Yes.
So it's wonderful that even though you went through those things and your mom was hard on you emotionally, you've been able to get to that point of understanding.
Yeah. So for a long time, you know, like after I went through what I went through, right, I was very confused.
In what
Right.
sense?
I just like, what happened to me?
Yeah.
Why did that happen to me? Right. So I went through like a roller coaster of, you know, very sad and then very angry. Right. And so a few times I would go to mama, she would have me get the extra money we made and go to the liquor store, and I'd come back with like four things of Old English, 40 ounces of Old English, and then sometimes she'd pour me a glass,
Yeah.
right? And at a very early age, I was like, man, I like the way this makes me feel, right? And I always wanted to tell mama what happened to me, but in the back of my head, I was told, if you tell anybody, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill them. I'm going to hurt everybody. And as a kid, you don't know any better. You just don't want the people that you feel that you love to be hurt, right? So from a very early age, I just understood, you just got to shut up, right? You just can't talk to no one.
Yeah.
So very early age, I started messing around with alcohol very slowly, right? And as you get older, I got older. Sometimes I was able to control the feelings with anger and sorrow. And sometimes I was able to just not even think about it. But when I started to think about it, man, I can't tell you the amount of fights I got in as a kid, right? Because I didn't know how to talk. I didn't know how to, I just got angry,
Yeah.
right? I always wanted to tell my brother and sister, but I didn't have a connection with them. As a child, I mean, they were there, but I didn't really know them.
Yeah.
They didn't know who I was, right?
So did you have a stigma for this reputation of being a fighter and channeling
Yeah,
your pain?
I was, you know, thank God for me, I never got into trouble like where the cops were involved.
Yeah.
But I always got into school fights. I was the kid that they had to have special counselors for. They had mentors come to the school, right? I was failing all my classes. I couldn't stay in class. If some of the teachers would touch me, I would flinch, right? I would start crying because I so badly I wanted to tell someone, right? And you know, like I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought, you know, maybe am I gay? I don't know if I'm gay. I mean, why did that happen to me?
Yeah.
I love girls, but why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
Right? And I couldn't, and because I would think like that, I would automatically, and for me to not to think like that, I would get myself angry, right? I would pick a fight, right? I would try to use my machismo to say, no, I'm not that person, right?
Yeah.
So eventually that anger started leading into more drugs. Marijuana came around, and then, sniffing Krylon, spraying Krylon into a bag and inhaling that,
Oh my goodness.
and then shrooms, and then crack came around, and then coke came around, and then, but I never got invested into it. Like I never like really let it. I never dove into it, right?
Like a full-fledged
I
addiction.
flirted with it.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I did constantly was alcohol.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was easy and it was quick. I can pay a homeless person a few dollars to go in there, get me a bottle, get myself a bottle, get him a bottle,
Yeah.
right? And then, or my mom was always bringing alcohol from work. So I'd get alcohol and put water in the bottle. She would never know, or I would blame it on my brother because my
Yeah.
brother was an alcoholic, right? But I always kept that with me. Always, always, always. My mom, she would bring a lot of pills. So my mom cleaned up condominiums at Coronado. It's a very beautiful island next to San Diego. But the tenants would bring stuff there, but they would leave stuff, right? They were snowbirds. They come in for the, for the winter time, stay there, then take off, right?
Yeah.
So she would come with a lot of medicine bottles, a lot of liquor. And one day I just started going through all her bottles and looking at her stuff and then popping stuff, just trying it, right? And then I ran into Oxy,
Oh,
right?
shoot.
I ran into Vicodins. I ran into this stuff. And then little by little, it just started popping these pills too at a very early age.
Yeah.
Wouldn't tell no one, didn't tell no one, right? I always kept it low key. I don't know if I was just always very secretive after all that stuff happened to me.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to no one about anything.
I think part of that is also I relate a lot to your story.
Yeah.
And if I may, I think a lot of that comes from the fact that you never really had anybody to lean on
Yeah.
to begin with.
Nobody.
So what is the point in telling people these things are happening to you? What is
Exactly.
the point of, trying to put into words why you're so aggressive? What is the point of trying to explain to people why you are drinking and numbing? And to be honest, during that time, did we even really know that that's what we were trying to do? Did we even really understand that we were running from everything that
Exactly.
happened to us? You know what I
Yes,
mean?
Yes.
So I think that probably plays a big role in why maybe you kept a lot of things to yourself, because you were your own protector.
Yes.
You were surviving on your own. How much do you feel like not having your biological father played an impact in your life?
You know, that's a good question because I don't. I think it was huge, but the man that I recently got to know, I talked to him a few times, and I realized, man, you're a coward.
Yeah.
I'm almost glad I didn't have you in my life because I probably would have been a coward like you.
Yeah.
Right? It's just not in my heart or my DNA to just leave my kids around, because I'm glad it happened, because for me, when I had my child when I was 15, I knew right there, I'm never going to leave you, dude,
Yeah.
no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Right? I don't ever want you to feel unprotected. I don't ever want you to feel what it is not to have a father in your life,
Yeah.
because it always hurt me, right? It always hurt me. And I made a pact to my son when he was like 6 months. I just told him one day, no matter what happens, bro, I will never leave you. No matter what's going on in my life, I will never leave you. And my son's 28 now. I never left his side once,
Yeah.
right? And I think, so to answer your question, I can't really answer it because I think God, at the end of the day, God does everything for everybody for a certain reason.
Yeah.
And I'm very, it makes me sad sometimes, but I'm glad I went through what I went through because it was my experience. It made me who I am today, right?
Yep.
No matter if the plane took off real hard and it was a lot of turbulence, but I can tell you right now, at this point in my life, it's a soft landing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that's the most best part about Revelation.
Yes.
Everything that you said, because like I said, I relate a lot to your story. I think about my biological father, and
Yeah.
when you're a kid, did you ever go through like, I wonder what he looks like?
Yeah,
I wonder
all the
what,
time.
do I look like him, and do I act like him? And I remember always thinking those things to myself, and
Yeah.
getting the opportunity to meet him and getting to know him better, and then having that revelation,
Yeah.
and just almost, there's a part of you that's like, you're your inner child yearns for what could have been, but
Yes.
then you also see
And
what is, and you are just like, Lord, you protected me.
me, exactly.
You protected me.
Ex-
And that loss was divine protection.
a
You
hundred
know, what
percent.
I didn't have was God looking out for me, even though in that moment going through it, it didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
But then you become a parent
Yeah.
and you perspective happens
Yeah.
and you see this child that you created and you're just
How
like,
can you ever?
what?
How can you ever?
Yes.
How could I ever? Never, you
Yes.
know? You know, it's me and my wife were talking about that the other day. It's just, I can never imagine leaving my kids,
Yeah.
right? It's just not in my blood, you know?
Yeah.
Um, the first thing that he says to me, like when I finally talk to him, is send me money.
Ay.
Like, bro, this is how we're gonna start the conversation off?
Yeah.
I was like, if anybody needs money or should get, it should be me.
Back pay. Okay. Back pay,
Right,
child
bro.
support.
We gotta get some of that child support, bro. You know, but that right there, like honestly, it was crazy because for so many years, like you said, one day he's gonna come knocking on the door and he's gonna take me away from all of this, right? It's gonna be some big, tall Mexican bodybuilder is gonna get me and we're gonna leave and we're gonna just get away from here. And I would always tell myself that
Yeah.
just to make me feel just a little bit better. And
Yeah.
it's crazy because when I started talking to him and hearing the way he talks and how he is, and nothing against him, I'm sure he has other kids and I'm sure his kids feel a certain way about him, right?
Mhm.
But I was like, you're just another man, dude.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was crazy because the little kid inside of me that was still inside there, a chapter of him washed away from my mind.
Yeah.
Right. I let something go that I'd been carrying for so long. It's weird. It was
Yeah.
so weird. Like I told my wife, for so long I was searching for this guy and I finally found him, and the expectations went from here to here.
Yeah.
But what was also cool is a certain part that was hurting my heart stopped. Right. And it just kind of vanished.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's weird like that,
Yeah.
but that's part of our healing.
Yeah, that's the beauty in Revelation. And one thing I've noticed about you too, when I was listening to Hopeaholics, the way you described, I think you were describing running to Mama's house.
Yeah.
Or where she was.
Oh man.
Where she was, and how you
Yes.
were like, I was right, running through the jungle, and it was like I was jumping over tigers
Yeah.
and da da da. And then even like thinking like, this big bodybuilder's gonna come and he's gonna take me away from this pain. And that highlights so much the amount of disassociation as children that we embody to escape the pain that we're living.
Yes.
And I just really wanted to highlight that because, I
Thank
think
you.
children, they grow up with these big imaginations,
Yeah.
I think sometimes a lot of people think it is very childlike, but for children that are surviving,
Yeah.
that's the escape from the abuse that we're enduring.
Yes.
And it's so profound because that big thinking, that big thinking follows us into adulthood. And I don't know about you, but it's almost helped my entrepreneurship because I can think big and anything is attainable because I've been thinking big my whole life.
My whole life.
Whole
my
life.
whole life. And that I've always been like that since I was a kid. Like ever since that happened to me, but for some reason, like being around Mama and being around Jerome, they added to that imagination, right? Because I remember crossing the bridge to go work with my mom, right? For the first time, I'll never forget this. When I got onto that bus, I remember as we're going over Coronado Bridge, I saw clear, beautiful blue water. I saw these giant yachts on the boat, right? Big, beautiful Navy destroyers out there, right? But it was just so beautiful because in my head, we were leaving a jungle,
Yeah.
right? We were leaving a jungle. And when I get down that bridge, it is the complete opposite. Every house is pristine, green grass, beautiful palm trees, no trash on the floor. The cars are clean. It was like she took me to another world.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember going into the condominiums that were right next to the Hotel Del. Right. I mean, the Hotel Del was just beautiful. And it's right next to the beach. Right. And I didn't see no prostitute. I didn't see no pimp out there. I didn't see no crackheads running around half naked, scratching their hair, looking at you like they're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't see none of it. It was the complete opposite. So, long story short, when we get back on to the bus to go back, as we're coming down this jungle, into the jungle in my head, like it almost felt like in my mind, there's there is a different life out here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, there is a bigger world out here. Right,
Mm-hmm.
other than Logan Heights, I never traveled anywhere.
Yeah.
That was all I saw every day, was just gang violence, shooting, drive-bys. I mean, I saw people literally getting stabbed in front of me, getting shot in front of me. I saw a guy get shot 10 times in front of me at a liquor store. Right, I mean, you name it, we saw it, we were around it. Right,
Yeah.
I knew prostitutes by their first names. Right, I'd be out there sitting with them, and they'd go into the store, buy me a bag of chips, and say, I'm gonna go do a job, I'll be back. Right,
Yeah.
and but again, my mom was never home. I didn't have brother My brother and sister were always gone, so I was always out in the street if I wasn't at home or if I wasn't at a babysitter's house. Right,
Yeah.
but my imagination that day just blew up.
Yeah.
Right, it's possible, it is possible to go out there. And I just told myself, one day I'm gonna live in a house like this. One day I'm gonna live in a house that has palm trees and it's clean and it's beautiful. And I tell people, if you look at my house now, it's a tribute to that day of imagination, that it
Yeah.
was possible. And I tell my wife all the time, there's times I pull up to my house and I have to pinch myself, like, fuck, man, you really did
Did
it,
it?
bro. You fucking did it.
Yeah.
Right? And we're just getting started, baby.
Yeah.
It's
Ah, I
crazy.
love that. I love that for you. It's such a
Thank you.
success story.
Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Um, I know that with a hard life comes, and you, like I said, are a man of faith.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I would imagine that with all that you've lived, something profound
Oh yeah.
happened
Yes.
to lead you to Christ.
Yes.
Can we know what that
Yes.
story
Yeah.
was?
So, um, I've always had, I've always had my issues internally, just never dealt with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I had my son. Um, as I got older, sometimes the drinking got worse. Right. And I was always like, I went to Catholic church. I used to go to we used to call them the Black People Church, right?
Baptist church.
Baptist church, right? But I would go for the free food. Right?
Yeah.
I'd wake up early. There was free food there. I'm going, whatever I got to do,
Yeah.
all the dancing. Let's go, baby.
Yeah.
I was there for the grub, dude.
Yeah.
Right? But in the back of my head, I was always angry with God. Like,
Mm.
I knew he was there, but why this happened to me, man? You know?
Mm.
So I get older, I drink a lot. I'm having some issues internally. I just never talked to anyone about it. And eventually the stuff got worse. I ran into my wife, right? We had 3 beautiful daughters, and I could never tell her. I never tell her when I met her, man, I got issues, right?
Yeah.
She saw the anger. She saw some of the fights through my time. She saw it come loose a few times where I lost control. Um, Fast forward, we start our business, right? This is in 2017. And at this point, I'm very stressed out, right? Um, how am I going to provide for my kids, right? The bills are getting heavy. The voices in my head, the memories what was happening is the memories in my head from my childhood started moving like freeways, back and forth though.
Mm-hmm.
Constant memories, constant visuals. Now this time I would start hearing men talk, and then I would freak out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She would touch me sometimes, my wife, and then I would freak out. Right? And then I started doing pills a lot. I got into pills. I started popping a lot of pills because I was trying to get my brain to shut down, to not think. And there were so many times, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I can visualize my mom opening the door to this house, saying hi to the lady. And I would try to stop that thinking from happening. I would try to stop that memory, and nothing would make it shut off. Like nothing. The only thing was drugs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Drinking a lot, popping a lot of pills. And at this time, we decided to open our business. And now all of a sudden the stress just went through the roof. And the more the stress came, the more the visualization of that memory just kept rewinding and rewinding and rewinding. So I was trying to keep my crazy from my wife and my kids. And my solution was to do more drugs.
Yeah.
So fast forward, you know, 2019, the pill popping just got worse. It got out of hand. I was doing coke to try to offset everything.
Mm-hmm.
I was drinking a lot. The voices in my head started getting very negative. Right? It's time to leave. It's time to get out of here. You know, if you want this to stop, you know, you gotta get out of here. You
Mm-hmm.
gotta shoot yourself. You gotta hang yourself. You gotta do a lot of pills. And what started to happen is I started to believe if I didn't want to feel this or go through this anymore, that was my only solution.
Yeah.
So 2020 comes around. My sister calls me and says, "Mom," at this point, my mom had been bedridden for almost 9 years or 7 years. And she had a stroke. She couldn't move. She couldn't talk. She was done.
Yeah.
Right. So she laid on the bed for that long. My sister calls me and says, she has a week, maybe 2 weeks if you're lucky. So if you want to say bye to her, you know, you got to come down. And I don't know what happened, but this crazy amount of anger just, my mom, you know, I was just very angry with her. Like, I could never tell you. I could never talk to anyone. You were the only person I could talk to, right? And these are the conversations that are going in through my head,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for me to stop thinking of my childhood, I turned it to being upset with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So when I walked into the room, my mom was, I mean, she was already gone. She's on her last days. And my brother and my sister, they left me alone with her. And man, I just remember I started crying. I started yelling at her. I started going crazy, right? I just walking back and forth, and I was trying to get these voices in my head to stop, right? I go back to the house and I just break down inside the trailer that we were sleeping in during that time in San Diego. They call us that night and said she's gone. And when they said that she was gone, something else just happened. The negativity just got even worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's time. It's time to fucking leave here, man. It's time to fucking go. Right? We gotta just done with this. Come with me.
Yeah.
Leave this place. And I didn't know how to tell my wife. I was looking at my kids, and I remember feeling just very selfish, right? I couldn't hug them right. I couldn't kiss them. I just felt like I just didn't want to be with nobody. I wanted to be alone. I just wanted to be alone. I couldn't stand myself anymore. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. So we bury my mom. We come back to San Jose, or I'm sorry, Brentwood, and not even like a week later, I believe, or two, we go on a camping trip, and I take a bunch of pills with me, and we're camping, and I'm trying to smile around my friends, around my wife, around my kid. I'm trying to be there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was gone inside here. I was so far gone. Um, we get back from the camping trip, and I was supposed to take my daughter to a travel ball tournament in Oregon for softball. And I convinced my wife, I said, I can't take her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want nobody in this house. I just want to be alone. Get out of here. And the devil won that day. The devil convinced me to just pop a lot of pills, grab a bunch of yayo, coke, and do as much drugs as possible. And started drinking. I just started drinking like crazy. I even got a bunch of Advil pills and Naproxens and stuff. I just started popping
Yeah.
all kinds of pills like crazy. And, you know, I could hear them in my head, man, let's go. It's time. It's fucking time. You're a fucking loser. You're a fucking loser. You're a quitter, right? All that stuff happened to you. It's time to go. I walk upstairs to my bedroom, and I'm looking in my mirror, and again, I didn't recognize who this guy was. His shirt was ripped. His face was covered in white. I was crying. My eyes were bulging from crying so much. And I remember as I turned to walk out to my bedroom, everything just went black.
Mm-hmm.
Everything went black. I just remember hearing someone so clearly in the bedroom with me saying, "You have to get up. You have to get up now." I opened my eyes. I couldn't breathe. I could barely breathe. I had boogers and snot and throw up and blood all over me. I'm looking at my stomach and there's like pills that weren't even melted yet,
Mm.
right? All over me, everywhere.
Yeah.
And I get onto my floors, my knees and my hands, and I'm just shaking, I'm wobbling. I kept hearing, "Get up. You have to get up." And I tell everybody, man, I know now 100% that was God in the room with me.
Mm-hmm.
I crawled myself to the toilet and I just kept throwing up. It was a lot of throwing up, a lot of blood, a lot of pills, a lot of just all kinds of stuff coming out. I remember it felt like someone shot me in my stomach and my chest. I couldn't breathe. I was shaking. I must have cried for hours and just crying. And I remember just telling myself, "This is it, bro. You can't hide this no more.
Yeah.
You you have to tell someone. You have to tell your wife. You have to tell your son." And I knew that if I told my son what just what I just went through and what happened, I knew that there was going to be no turning back. The cat's out the bag. I'm his hero. I'm his man. I have to come clean, right? And I stood there for a few more hours. I waited and waited, trying to deal with all my stuff I was going through. And finally, he comes over to check on me, and I cleaned myself up. And he knew there was a problem because I was shaking. I was, I just didn't look right,
Yeah.
you know. And I finally came out and I told him. At this time, my wife called my sister, and she drove up overnight. And my sister's very heavy into the word,
Mm-hmm.
right? Very heavy. And she's a big part of the reason why I fully turned my life around too, along with my family. But I told her too, and automatically she started praying over me. And my wife comes home the next day, and I ask everybody to leave, and I tell my wife what happened, and I told her what I heard in the room when I was alone. I told her I just I can't run no more. I got to come clean to you too and tell you what's been going on inside here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I finally told her, and after that, we go to the hospital. Tell the hospital what happened, and they ran my blood test, and they're like, "Man, you took enough drugs to kill an elephant, dude.
Yeah.
Like, how are you still here?"
Yeah. We are sturdy
And
man.
I'm telling you, when I heard that, though, I was like, "Man, there was someone in the room with me."
Yeah.
Right. And I was still, I was still angry with him, but I knew there was a higher power in there with me, watching me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So fast forward, it was 2020. They There was really no place for me to go because they weren't allowing anyone to go anywhere to go get cleaned up.
Yeah.
So I tell everybody the story. My wife, for a good 6 months, literally was in the house alone with the devil. Me cleaning up and getting sober was, I think, I tell her every day, thank you, because I remember I couldn't control what was coming out of my mouth, my my anger, my temper tantrums, I was just lost. I was confused. I was dealing with all these emotions without running
Yeah.
to drugs,
Yeah.
right? And then the pictures and the memories and the noises just got louder and louder and louder. But cold turkey, man, I didn't touch anything, right? Her praying over me, her telling me to stay positive, her not quitting on me, her not leaving me, right? She had so many times to say, "Dude, I can't deal with this," right? yelling at her and threatening her, scaring her, right? I mean, that's just a much deeper story, but
Yeah.
she was trapped in a house with the devil, but she never ran. She never quit on me. Um, and then one day she says, we got to go to church. We went back to a Catholic church. I wasn't feeling it. I just wasn't feeling it. No disrespect towards them,
Yeah.
but it just wasn't working for me. And we kept going and we kept going and we kept going. And then she said, let's try something new. And we tried something new. We went to the Fellowship Church in Antioch. And when I walked into that place and Pastor Sean started talking, it felt like I was on stage with the light on me, sitting by myself, and he was talking directly to me and my feelings and what I'm going through and how God is here with you, man. Right? I mean, he just started pouring into me, and I just felt something change inside of me like that. Automatically, my anger with God started to really decompress, right? My anger with my mom started to decompress. And then I told her, we got to go back again.
Yeah.
We got to go back again, right? I need more of that. I need more of that. And here we go, Um, every day is a challenge, right? Every day
Yeah.
is not perfect, right? But I get up and I tell him, thank you every day for giving me another opportunity, man,
Yeah.
right? I apologize to my kids as often as I can. I was like, that will never, ever happen again.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how surrender goes hand in hand with exhaustion?
Oh, yeah.
Spiritual
So,
exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. You're just at your wit's end.
man, and I told my family this. God literally brought me to my knees.
Yeah.
He brought me to my knees. He tore me down, but he's refining me.
Yeah.
He's reconstructing me,
Yeah.
right? And he's using me, and I understand what my purpose is now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like as I started to clean up, I was chasing money too, right? For work and for paying the bills and my family, and right. And it's like I don't do that no more, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do the right thing, and that's love.
Yep.
I give love because God is love,
Yeah.
right? The more love you give, the more you get. The more he gives me, the more I give.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
It literally
You know
isn't,
what I'm saying?
and it sounds cliche to people.
Yeah.
It sounds cliche. Actually, one of the number one things that I pray
Yeah.
for everyone that I love, like genuinely who I know need the Holy Spirit in their life,
Yeah.
is I pray that God brings them to their knees.
Yes.
And I know that is a
It's
strong prayer to pray because you hitting that point of being on your knees, it ain't pretty when you've endured so much.
No, man.
But the revelation that comes
Yes.
after now,
Yes.
the renewal, the
Yes.
reform,
Yes.
the way you are rebuilt, the way
Yes.
all the puzzle pieces come together and you just understand.
Yes.
It's like you see life through new eyes and you experience life through a new heart and you
Yes.
deal with situations with a new mind.
Yes.
And I want everyone to experience
Yeah.
that. Like, please, surrender right now to God. Okay.
But that's
It's so.
I tell people all the time, man, like he literally stopped me in my tracks
yeah.
and said, no, we're gonna break this down, dude.
Yes.
We're gonna
Yes.
tear this up and we're gonna reconstruct who you
Yeah.
are. And again, some days are great, right? Some days, I have issues, but when I'm having those issues, I stop and I say a quick prayer, man, please look out for me. Please
Yeah.
make me stronger. Please make me wiser. Use me. How can I help
Yeah.
the next man? Each one, teach one.
Each one teach one.
That's it.
Yes.
As I'm learning from him, I have to teach the next one.
Yeah.
I have to show the next one. I have to give the next one love,
Yeah.
right? You're watering me. I got to water him,
Yep.
right? That's the way. That's love.
Yep.
You give the love, you get it, and you give it.
Yep. And you're building that spiritual endurance.
Yes.
I think a lot of people think when you give your life to God, all the problems go away. And the thing
No.
is, they don't. You still have those problems. You still got to fight your vicios and
Yes.
your habits and
That's
your
right.
thought process.
That's right.
The difference is that you have the mental fortitude, the spiritual fortitude to endure,
Oh, yeah.
to see it through.
And another thing, like with anger now, right? Before I would let something would anger me, and that anger for that day, for that moment would be a full day of anger.
Yeah.
And before it would be 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Where now, like, you know what? I can identify that, and understand that it's not worth it, because whatever angers you controls you.
Yeah.
The devil wants you to be mad. The devil wants you to be angry, right? Because when you're in anger thought of mind, you do negative things, right? You only promote negative things. And that's easy. What's not easy is making sure you stay happy and you're in love and you're in respect, right? Acknowledging that, right? Yeah, let it come in, but learn how to deal with it and spit that shit back out the other way.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of times before we'd get that, turn it around, and it's easy to just run with anger, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get that. And that's something that I'm still learning every day. And I'm promoting it to my people, man. Whatever angers you controls you. Don't be controlled.
Emotional regulation and emotional intelligence is 100%. A fundamental key to life.
100%.
And we fail. I failed earlier today.
Every day. Boy, let me tell you. Boy, he cut me off, man. Man. Yeah. I want to honk, so I want to roll up to. Boy, let me tell you. Hey, have a good day, brother.
Yep. You got to. Well, I thank you so much for this. Freaking conversation went by fast, but but this is like a cliffhanger, because I have a special announcement.
All right.
Who you see here is one of our panelists for our up and coming Each One Teach One event going down June 21st. And if you enjoyed this transparency and this freaking energy and freaking just all of the goodness that was in this interview,
let's go.
Then you have to come out and you have to hear him speak live, and I get to host you.
Yes, ma'am. Let's do it.
And we will dive more into conversation, and there we will talk about your business and how you were able to grow into fruition with entrepreneurship.
Yes, ma'am.
So don't miss it. Danny,
thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your testimony. Yes, I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, you guys, take care.